jump on, and all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands, River Islands in Lathrop? And before we get to the weekend and the first half, I just want to say, as somebody who was in the stands out there on Saturday afternoon, on a beautiful afternoon in San Francisco, to see the four of you along with Santiago and Jeremy and Sergio, and sitting there interacting with each other, watching highlights, answering questions from Dave Fleming. It was all a lot of fun. Congratulations, Javy, on the Wall of Fame.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me. It was a great weekend, dialed up awesome weather. So, yeah, we had a lot of laughs, a lot of good times the last few days. And we had a chance to share with the crowd and everybody on Saturday, which was fantastic.
And what a cool way to celebrate a great bullpen by blowing a save yesterday. How about that?
Hey, you know what? You can't be predictable, right? You got to make sure you make it fun for everyone as you close out the first half.
Well, I mean, Javy, what do you think about Camilo Doval? It feels like a problem right now. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's not as straightforward and as seamless as it seemed to be the last few years. I'm not sure exactly what it is. I haven't really tried to break down any video on him yet, but yeah, things aren't as smooth as he'd like it to be, I'm sure. But he set that bar awful high. But if there is a time to maybe fumble, this would be the time to do it early. And when it comes down to it, try to lock in on some wins. And they were able to do that. This is a good bullpen that if he does need some time to figure some things out, you have plenty of pieces that you can plug into that ninth inning and kind of give him a breather and a reset if he needs it.
Is there a little concern about the amount of workload, though, for this bullpen leading Major League Baseball in innings pitched? Is there a concern that they might start to break down a little bit late here in the year?
Of course, I'm sensitive to that being a bullpen piece. I do think that will become an issue if this starting rotation does not hold up their end. I mean, like you mentioned, the bullpens cover the most in baseball, which means your starting pitching has covered the least. And when you looked at the strengths of the team going into this 24 campaign, you figured, well, all right, you got Logan Webb, you make a big sign, and you get Snell, and you bring in some arms, and you make the trade for Robbie Ray, and that I wouldn't want to put pressure on him. I don't think that's the right word, but it would be nice for them to kind of pick it up a little bit and give some of these guys a break, because you never want to be you can have maybe one or two guys tops in your top 10 in the Major League Baseball. When you have 1 and 2 in Major League Baseball in appearances, that may be an issue coming late August and into September.
Javy Lopez with us here, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Javy, I look back at the bullpen that we celebrated over the weekend, and it looked so defined. Everybody knew exactly what their role was, and everybody was able to play to that. And again, I know the rules are different now, but when you look at this group, does it feel like that? Does it feel complete, or do you still see adjustments as needed?
No, you know what? I've been able to call a few games and kind of watch this season progress. I feel like they have fallen into some roles, and if there's a bridge guy, it's going to be Jelly. If you need to try to get into that seventh inning, it's been Ryan Walker, eighth inning Rogers, and then obviously the ninth with Camilo. So I do think that the guys are kind of understanding when they're going to get going, and I think that's why you're seeing them at their best, and they've been very consistent as opposed to maybe the last years when there's a little bit of fluctuation as to when they were going to pitch. These guys have kind of understood what the game, follow along, figure out what innings they're going to pitch. And I think that's where you've seen them at their best. And I do think, again, the workload is an issue, not just for those Walker and Rogers, but I mean, really for all of them. I feel like the innings that they've had to cover has been a lot. But you do kind of enjoy that luxury of having those guys down there, and Rodriguez being another one, be able to come up from the minor leagues and been asked to go multiple innings multiple times and done such a great job. It's an exciting bullpen. You know what you have down there. And that's why I think if that's starting pitching, I do see daylight at the end of this one here with the starting pitching. You get that lined up with the back end of the bullpen the way they've been pitching, you become a formidable team in the second half. I mean, I know I shouldn't say they dug themselves a hole, but you're still under 500, but you can make a run. I mean, there are some winnable series coming out of the break, and so I'm interested to see what they do come trade deadline, if anything.
And also, when you get Robbie Ray back, and it looks like he'll be ready to go here coming out of the All-Star break rather soon, does that give you the luxury of maybe shifting one of your current starters to the pen? I'm thinking about Jordan Hicks, a guy who's already reached his career high in innings pitched. Would that be a move that might be made to have Hicks be able to preserve the arm a little bit and then be more productive out of the bullpen?
Yeah, I imagine all suggestions are being taken in by Farhan and Pete and the rest of the coaching staff to try to figure out what they're going to do. Robbie Ray, again, I mean, I imagine he'd be on some sort of pitch count. Former Cy Young Award winner, knows what his body can and can't do at this point. I'm sure he wants to probably rev it up. But I guess from all I've been gathering that he's coming out of things healthy and strong. And, Snell had a great outing yesterday. So you just want to have that continue. I think Alex Cobb isn't too far behind. And now you've got some pieces that you can do some things. And like you mentioned with Jordan Hicks, I mean, he's now in that uncharted territory, right? And I feel like if he jumped into the bullpen, he's obviously comfortable there. He's done it for most of his career, if not all of his career, besides the minor leagues. That would be an easy kind of plug and play there. But I wouldn't doubt that maybe they do a little piggybacking situation, maybe go a 6-man rotation, try to find a way to make these guys, pick each other up where it can take off that pressure of the bullpen. But you're right, there are some pieces and some questions that are going to need to be answered sooner than later, and that's always a tough one for me because you're always having to deal with somebody's job either getting taken away or being sent down to the minor leagues, and that's a tough one. Those are going to be tough conversations, but they need to be had, and I'm sure Bomel is taking some time here in the next few days with Brian Price to figure out what the best moves will be.
Javy, how many times in your career were you traded?
Traded 1, 2, 3 times.
Okay. Wow. All right. Just because like the deadline is upon us, and I wonder what this is a little bit. There's a couple things I want to ask here. First of all, what is that like? What is this time of year like for the players?
Well, it depends on what situation you're in. Like, when I was traded from, I was in AAA with the White Sox and got traded to the Red Sox, and that was a late June trade. So it was different. The White Sox were kind of, I knew I was going to get called up there. I wasn't a piece for them. So the Red Sox needed an arm, and they were battling in the AL East, trying to hold on to first place. So that was a cool experience because now you jump into a race, and that's fun. In Pittsburgh, again, the Pirates weren't going anywhere in 2010 when I was there for 4 months. And so basically anybody over 30 got traded. I got traded to the Giants, who were trying to chase down and hold on for the title with the Padres in the NL West. So when you become that piece that gets traded, you're kind of excited because I've been fortunate enough to be a piece that's helped in those situations. Now, thankfully, I did not have the other way where it's like kind of like a salary dump and you're just going to a worse off team. That's a tough one in particular, but it can be a difficult time for the boys when you're in there and you're that bubble guy on a bubble season. Like they're make or break. And I did that with the Giants as well. Ultimately, they didn't trade me, but 2013, I believe it was, Hunter Pence and I were both going into free agency at the end of that year. And I believe we were in Philly, and, the trade deadline, I'll give Brian Sabian and Bobby Evans a lot of credit. They kept us in the loop and they kept us engaged in the conversation and said that they kind of set a high dowry for us if they were going to trade for us. And ultimately it didn't happen. And thankfully it didn't, because then we won the World Series in 2014. But yeah, it's a weird time. It's a weird time to be a baseball player that's either going to be an impending free agent or a guy that could help another club. I mean, it's with so many teams in the race all across baseball, it'd be interesting how many moves actually end up happening here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, and that kind of takes us to where the Giants sit now. And Farhan's comments last week that A, he's disappointed, and B, the players will determine with their play over the next couple of weeks if the Giants are a buyer or a seller. If you were a player on a team, how would comments like that play in the clubhouse?
Well, I definitely think you got to check yourself in the mirror, right? You got to be able to look at yourself honestly and be like, hey, what's missing? Not just team wise, but personally. Like, have I hit the goals and the targets that I've set myself so far? And I'm not sure how many yeses you're going to get up and down that entire roster. I think there's been moments where people have been playing outstanding baseball and things work. Now, what I do like is how unified they are. Watching this team play, they're gritty, they're grindy. You know, I don't think, honestly, looking back, I'm not sure how many games they've actually been blown out in. I feel like they've played a lot of tight ball games where maybe one play here, one play there changes the whole dynamic of that game. And not only that, the series and maybe what their overall record would be. I'm not saying they've, left 10 to 15 on the table, but I think you could definitely make an argument that there was about 4 to 5 that puts you at 500. So, I do think looking back on that, there's going to be growing pains. They've had to lean on their younger guys, on the prospects, and there's pains with that, with a couple guys, making maybe a key error here and there, getting picked off, and maybe making a bad pitch or bad swing. But I do like what's here. I don't know how much you want to leverage to get a piece. That's where I think Farhan's probably coming from. How much do you want to give up, especially when these young guys are starting to show the ability to play at a big league level? But I do like the gritty, the grindiness of this team. I just think it's more probably cleaner ball and more consistent baseball, in particular on the road. I think they got to figure out how to win some series on the road. And once they do that, if they do that, they can, like I said, if this starting pitching gets lined up, they may be a problem.
Yeah, 19-28 on the road so far this year. Javy Lopez here on 95.7 The Game. You were talking about cleaning it up, and I can't help but think about the stolen base disparity. They don't run a lot, and on the other side, it seems like teams are running hog wild against them. What's the fix, Javy, for just being able to control the running game?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a lot of work as well in the video room. I think there might be some tells that guys are doing, and as a pitcher, there's things that you just don't realize you do when you're in the heat of battle. You don't, and I was a victim of that as well. I'd sit there and I'd come set and it had this weird thing where I would like lick my lips like a little frog, like stick my tongue out. And I didn't know I did it, but I had to be shown that I did that. And that's when I did that, I picked off the first base. And it was just so ridiculous. You don't even notice that you're doing it. But then I finally used that to my advantage, and I would, do that, and I'd pitch, and I'd purposely do that, and then I wouldn't do it and pick over and try to change it up. But, when you have an arm and Patrick Bailey back there, and even Kirk Casale been throwing the ball extremely well as of late, you got to give those guys a chance. And I do think there'll be some video room crunching it to figure out what's going on. And then on the Giants side, it's just the dynamic players maybe not there all the way up and down that lineup. But I do think, you do have guys in Wisely and Fitzgerald and Estrada being back. Estrada stole a bunch of bases last year. You have the players to do that. It's just a matter of getting them on base. I think towards the end of the year, the Giants were looking for that, kind of a station thing. And it's awful hard to get 3 hits in an inning in Major League Baseball. And I think Bomel had probably mentioned that he's just trying to find a way to put a little pressure on the defense, because that's all it takes. You put pressure on it. You got to make a great catch. You got to catch the pitch. You got to make a great catch to second base, and then you got to apply the tag. There's lots of variables that can go wrong, and we've seen it. I mean, the Giants have run into that where they haven't been able to be clean. And so if you can put a little bit of pressure on it, then it just takes one big swing to kind of put a crooked number up there. And I think that is something that they're going to try to figure out, maybe toy with the lineup, who hits where. But you do want some speed up there. Just put a little bit of pressure as a pitcher, especially with the time clock, with the pitch clock going on, and things aren't going right. Your brain speeds up and things speed up on you, and now you're worried about a runner. Those things will make you make a mistake.
Did you go out and see your plaque yet?
I did go see it, yes. I'm back home now, but I did make sure we stopped by and take a picture of all the boys. It's fun to, like I said, it was fun to be around all those guys again this weekend, but I did a picture with all the boys and then did a little family shot in front of mine. So my kids can actually see that Daddy did something kind of cool, because they were so young by the time I left left the Bay. So now being up on the wall for the rest of the time, as long as that stadium stands there, it's just an absolute honor to be up there.
Fantastic. Sometimes the trades you make or the trades that work out. You were traded for John Bowker and Joe Martinez, a couple of young Giants who had some promise, and just for some quote-unquote journeyman lefty who kind of worked out.
I would do that deal again.
Yeah, I think so. I like the trade.
I mean, that was about that trade. I mean, it's, Joe Bowker, I believe, or Joe Martinez, I believe, is in the commissioner's office now. So, he's moved up. He's a big timer in Major League Baseball. It's just funny how things work out. It really is. And I was fortunate enough to fall into a great situation with a great manager, soon to be Hall of Fame manager, and it was just worked out so well. And it's almost, when I'm looking back on it, it's crazy that out of all the things they plucked me out of Pittsburgh, when we only played the Giants one time, I think, and maybe it might have been April, and I didn't know anybody on that team, to be honest with you, except for Jonathan Sanchez, and they end up coming calling and kind of plucking me from thankfully from a bad situation in Pittsburgh. So, I'll take a race any day.
Javy, congrats, man.
I appreciate it, guys. I really do. And thanks for being there and supporting us. And that goes out to the fans too. I mean, we lucked out. We got to play with that place full. Oracle Park was full for whatever it was, 5-6 years during that whole time. That's what I remember most. That place was jammed and rocking. And I hope it comes back. I mean, these boys, they get it going. They stay hot. The crowd's been better. I think they're going to enjoy this product.
Yeah, the crowd's definitely been better, no doubt about it. Nothing compares to that earlier era, though. Javy, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you coming on.
No problem at all. Anytime, guys.
Thanks, Javy.
All right.